Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life. My name is Valentino, who your hosts on Smooth Breakfast this morning, Friday, the 18th of June 2021. I'm joined by Oyemi Emmanuel. Good morning.
Morning. Good
And
morning, Lagos.
Tunde Okufi. Good morning.
Morning, Valentine. Good
Thank you
morning,
so
Yemi, and
much.
good morning, Lagos.
Good morning. We're about to go into the stories together. Tunde Okufi and Oyemi Emmanuel will be providing the analysis to these stories. If you want to find the headlines, just to be familiar with them, please go on social media and check out Smooth 981 FM, the hashtag Freshly Pressed 981. Oyemi Emmanuel is at Oyemi I Mano, right? The Emmanuel is replaced by an I. That the E in the Emmanuel is I. Big Coops is Tunde Kufi's social media account at Big Coops, Kuffs, right? All right, let's get into this.
We're not mentioning which ones anymore.
I know, right? Please send in messages to WhatsApp 0809 We'll try to make it as feel good Friday as much as possible. You can also message through YouTube. We're streaming live, so you can watch and comment as well on that platform. Use the name, just type in the search box Smooth FM Lagos if you haven't subscribed, but subscribe and watch. WhatsApp number again 0809 Emmanuel, oh, you hear me? Nigeria or Naira, could as well be Nigeria. We're all affected by this. Naira stages recovery, strengthens to 483 Naira per dollar on parallel markets. They said this is partly due to, or mostly due to the efforts of forex traders, the BDC operators, speaking through its president, Haji Aminu Gwadabe, warned forex speculators that they might lose up to 100 billion in the next month as CBN is trying to boost funding for Bureau de change operators. But how's the effects going to be felt by everyone in this case, and how long lasting do you see it?
This is going to be our space for a long time until we solve the major issues which are driving the forex disorder. We're in a situation where our country isn't making as much money as it used to be. Adding COVID, adding all of the permutations in recent times, insecurity, because a lot has also influenced the behavior of people. You know, a lot of people are, I mean, you've heard a lot of rich people talking about storing their money outside Nigeria. So who are we the lowly not to speculate and play games with, you know, the forex? So I think that we're going to be in this spot for a while. I mean, these permutations will continue. The CBN and generally the money regulators have made significant effort to give balance. There's a school of thought that if they float the naira and just allow it to be driven by the market, it will bite initially, but we will probably be in a better place in the long run. How willing the regulators would be to do that, because I mean that would escalate a lot of the issues that we have, reinflation, all of those things, you know. So we're going to be playing this speculation game. People are going to continue to, you know, I for instance, I'm thinking I'm significantly poorer than I've been in a long time, you know. That
Well, obviously poorer than the one.
I remember when the dollar was 158, and it's still the same.
You do? I don't remember.
I do. I actually remember, because that was the first time that I carried my own money and change by myself. You know.
So going by that last thought you just shared,
Yeah.
thank you so much for putting that. How much do savings in foreign currencies affect this trend that we're seeing in terms of naira depreciating?
Well, it will bridge the gap for a bit. It's significantly different because look at people who get, particularly for those in commercial contracts, they get into those contracts in an environment that is $3.50 to $1, for instance. And now today they're stuck with a 200 naira what? You know, how you even going to make provision for that commercially?
Especially when the timeline for project execution
Exactly,
is affected by policies, courts going on
even
strike.
basics, let's even say
issues.
basics like insecurity. Let's even say that there are some people that can implement contracts because they can access certain parts of those contracts are supposed to be implemented. So how do you even play all of those factors in It's more secure, to be honest. I'm not advising
More secure
anything
to do what?
to store your money.
Before?
But that's why I'm focusing on more than the story, which I mean, it's a win, right? But these wins are 12 naira, 10 naira margins.
Yeah,
We keep doing this,
hence my question today, and I'm sure you understand why I'm asking this. I mean, if it's more secure, it's a common sensical thing
Yeah.
to save money in foreign currency because you know that if you're safer.
Yeah.
Look at it through all metrics, right? The regulators, I assume, would know this, will understand the individual benefits, right? How do they now make sure that, okay, in light of all these policies and all the anyhowness that surrounding security in Nigeria, how do we make sure that we incentivize people who are nairalized to become more nairalized than dollarized, if you understand what I mean?
It's simple, fix the economy. It's as simple as that. Look, Yemi pointed out that we are in actual terms as individuals, or every time the naira depreciates. I mean, if you're a salary earner, for instance, that goes a little bit further, a little less further than it used to, right? And let's realize and remember that we're a very import-dependent nation, right? So clearly, the price of everything, adjusts when when the purchasing power parity of our currency, weakens and depreciates. So it's difficult. There's no other way to say. I mean, if you want capital preservation in this country, a lot of, if you can, is to translate into FX, which puts further pressure on the naira and its value, no doubt. So it's almost like a cycle in that sense. Those who can afford it will want to stockpile USD, and that puts pressure on the currency as well. To fix it ultimately is, like I said, fix the economy.
I ask these questions. I mean, in light of what we've discussed here, and Tunde, thank you so much for adding that thought. I was just reflecting on the recent story that I caught during the week about Russia moving to ditch the dollar from National Wealth Fund, pretty much almost liquidating $195 billion and moving it to assets in euro and gold. I mean, once upon a time we used to have foreign reserves in those commodities, yeah.
Russia is in a different place than we are. To be honest.
I mean, since we know how to, we'll see in the coming stories how we like to compare ourselves to other countries.
And for them, it's even more. It's more geopolitical for them to make that. For Russia for them to make that.
Okay, thank you. I'll come to you today for this next story. Premium Times reports that on Kebbi abduction. Yesterday, we got a report that 80 students were abducted. The policeman was killed in an unfortunate attack in Kebbi State. There's a development to that story. Tanko Sununi, the lawmaker representing Shanga Yauringa's federal constituency of Kebbi State, disclosed that before the latest attack in Yauri Kebbi State, bandits had been attacking the community uninterrupted and even giving an information like warning that they were coming back before this last night attack. The thoughts, please.
Yeah, I mean, so certain things that I'd like to, pick up from here. It's well worn to don't know this now. It's the theme is that banditry, abductions, and it seems to be going unchecked by and large, which is why they can act with this, brazen nature. I mean, things that, like I said, to point out, uninterrupted, which means that there is no fear and no worry that they will be interrupted by security services, right? So that's one. They informed the people ahead of time that they were coming. They even informed them that they would return, and they did indeed return, right? The other thing to point out is that they were by eyewitness accounts, between 250 to 300 of them. That's a large number. It's difficult to miss. This is not a quick minute operation, right? Yes. They were armed with AK-47s. Another point to note: these things are not cheap, by the way, and they had very strong motorcycles also. So this is a very well-funded operation in a sense, because it has become lucrative. It's become lucrative because ransoms are paid. It's become lucrative because there seems to be no consequences. It's become lucrative because it seems like we're unable to check them, right? So these guys have gotten very wealthy, running this, and it should be scary and calamitous for any community that that befalls this sort of thing. It should be worrying for all of us, to be honest, because it has not just implications for today and a bunch of the things. I mean, it hit us in so many so many ways. We've fallen down on all sorts of rankings, right? Including economic and financial ones. The willingness for people to bring funding into the country and FDI. It hit us in so many. It is the worst type of PR possible for the entire country, right? But then when you think about the communities themselves, one of the huge consequences that will hit us further down the line is that a lot of people, schools are one of the big targets. So parents are not sending their children to schools anymore. That will, and as we struggle already in those parts of the country, we already have very low literacy rates, very low attendance in schools. This will then further impact that, and this will hit us further down the line. We complain that part of the issue in these troubled parts of the country, first of all, is large numbers of unemployed and of gainfully engaged youth, right? We're creating more of that, down the line by not addressing this, So really and truly, we've been talking of it taking time home. It's like the fuse is getting
Let me
closer and
add
closer.
something. So one of my colleagues yesterday said, anyways, but I would have left by the time the bandits reach Lagos. Like he was
Everybody
like,
wants to check out.
so I mean, everyone has just relaxed into this, Let me just look at
Escapist mentality.
yes, and we're not really focusing. And it seems like it's not just for polity, even people who are supposed to be solving this are not necessarily. There's that abandonment. These are reality.
It is scary. I mean, it's scary to me. They operated for 8 hours. according to this
Wow,
report.
and with no interception, nothing.
And then the police has the effrontery to come out with a statement after. I'd rather, they kept quiet and said, it was beyond our control, than speak through some. It's embarrassing enough for you to have police presence. Yes, we talk about understaffing of police, but it's a broken record. What do we learn?
No. And the thing about it is, with each additional story, there's a copycat out there that's waiting to implement
And
what
using the
else,
same MO. It's almost like they've shared their playbook, and
Exactly.
the government has, it's lacking infrastructure to
and
protect
all
it
that
all.
our House of legislatures think about is to
And we have
criminalize,
representatives from those
seeking
areas,
to
right?
criminalize ransom payments and not necessarily solve the problem.
Abayami Akarikiri says, good morning, guys. When are we going to ask the governors in the north why they haven't closed boarding in schools? These governors are culpable. Also, neighboring states to troubled states should close their borders because displaced terrorists move to the next available state. Samuel from Lekki says the government have made these people government paid them ransoms, promoted amnesty for them, so even when they're arrested, they're sure of getting out in the name of reintegration as repentant bandits, so they have no risk. It's sad. The poor are those suffering these attacks. Tommy says, so there are more reaching effects of this banditry, or whatever names we choose to call the criminals running wild and free in the Northwest at the moment. Aside the huge national image depreciation, it will rapidly fuel the already existing distaste for formal education in that region and increase the recruitment pool for these criminals when young people who are supposed to be in school are loitering the streets. Sad. Just sad. Thank you, Rotimi, for that. Joseph says, do you remember when the same government told us 2 years ago that there's no negotiation between the central banks of China and Nigeria for transactions to be done with yuan to reduce the pressures on the dollar? It's just obvious the government of the day isn't bothered or bothering about anything except when they're criticized. Thank you, Joseph. Dan Okuda says, why are non-governments not doing anything about incessant kidnapping? A time will come when all schools will be shut in the north. Thank you, Barrister Dan. Let's move on to the next story. Subscribers may pay more as government moves to levy airtime. This has been criticized strongly by operators under the licensed telecoms operators of Nigeria. They said, first of all, it's almost tantamount to dual taxation or double taxation that most companies or enterprises have been complaining about with FIRS and the likes. But this is now to the individual. The excuse that the Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation, Ben Akpabezi, is, quote, last year we found that 51 countries in Africa have excise on airtime charges. So we're looking at that as well as an air tax.
Why not us?
Why? Besides that, if you're comparing yourself to an entity, do you compare just the good or rather the bad? Or rather the good?
This thing takes us back to the conversations that I believe dominate the discussions at Freshly Best, right? policy is to be integrated into the realities of people. You don't just make
I'm not
policy.
away from it.
I'm not away from it. And there's something that I wanted to point out. The head of Alton, which is the telecoms self-regulatory body, says that it's not even clear why this policy
There's no
is. It's
reason.
not
There's
clear.
no clear
It's not
reason.
clear, and we keep saying it. Policy is supposed to shape behavior. For you to achieve that, for you to get buy-in, you're not talking to citizens that are daft. You're talking to citizens that have pain points, that understand these things. Let it be clear. If the primary subscribers, when I say subscribers, that is the people who are rendering the service, can't even see, how much more us, those who buy the services, how would we understand why? It's just another cost that will be passed down to the 190 million subscribers who are Nigerians, who are already suffering, who are already in pain, who are. Do you get, like, you need to integrate this thing into the realities of people? Yes, let us go to the root of it. Government is on a money drive. We're making less money
clear.
than we've ever made, right? And we need money. One of the consequences will be, taxation is government revenue. It's one of the key ways through which government makes money. But government hasn't even earned the trust on the ones that they have collected.
Which is
Everything.
how do you apply the tax that you collected so far?
Even here, Alton is saying that already the industry is subject to over 35 taxes and levies. And then you're bringing another one. The reason, and this one, I think what's more interesting in the story is that this is an excise tax, right? Excise taxes are usually for locally manufactured goods. What is manufacturing input into recharge cards? And why? So what is exactly the justification for the levy or the tax? Why are we even introducing it? And the only thing is, it makes these services more expensive. In the world we live in today, these services are so integrated to how we do business. So you're also looking at it further driving costs up, inflation impact as well. So
and don't forget, in
and
this telecom sector, right? There's a shared USSD charge with the banks and all that that's incurred by the subscribers themselves.
And there's so many other things that are flying in the air. If you go look at laws and bills that are being projected, how to make more money from the digital economy. So, and that's an economy that you want to free up for more access, at least per policy, per what has been said over time. You want to free up that space for more access, for more subscription, for more for people to buy in even more. So why are you increasing the cost of operating in that space?
I would have expected that.
It's in some countries it's a basic right. Let's not forget that.
It is a basic right.
You get,
it is a basic right.
Today,
and the least you can ask for is quality service. For instance, you look at some of the service offerings or the sub-services you get from telecom networks. Just examine those things: data services, call services, internet connection. What was the last time you actually checked? Today, do you have excellent 4G service?
It's choppy,
let's not forget that even these telecoms operators are having to deal with social issues like insecurity. Some of them I hear can't even access certain posts.
And the installations.
Do you get? Yes. And they're getting vandalized. They're having to deal with, management as well. So I don't think it's the time, and I don't think time and chance is aligned with this decision.
Thank you so much, Oyemi. Ella from Akoka is here with the message. 3 words summarize the government: power without responsibility. We should be thanking God that air is free, else. Today, Nigerian businesses shun IPOs, raised 3.09 trillion via commercial papers. Can you run us through this story? Let us understand the details.
Okay, so essentially, when corporations or companies want to raise money, either to expand, obviously clearly to expand and generate, they have a number of options. One of them is to do an initial public offering, which is essentially go public, when at the end of the name, they put PLC, right? You're a public company, you are bound by a certain set of rules and guidelines. Now, obviously, that means that your shares are listed on the stock market. Now, a number of factors, and you can't disassociate this from the economy as well, because one of the indices that people generally use or look to for the health and balance of any nation and the strength of the economy is also the stock markets, at least in the first world. For a number of factors. One, people having having for lack of a better word, spare cash to invest in stocks, and also those companies, doing well in and of themselves to attract investors, right? So now, if you put that together, a generally weak economy, the stringent rules, I mean, commercial paper is one of them. Company bond to being so a commercial paper is relatively short term, instruments where, in simple terms, you loan money from individuals, and they issue you some sort of some security or some document to say, this is what you're giving to us, and they're able to take those funds and invest in the things they want to invest in, grow their business without the same let me not say stringent. It also has its own stringent measures, because in 2009, the central bank put in a raft of measures to sort of regulate. Even after those regulations were introduced, commercial papers sort of crashed. But recent reforms in 2014 have sort of cleaned that up, and commercial papers have become a lot more attractive. Especially before any company goes public, you are looking at the stability of the economy. You're looking at the naira, for instance.
In the long term, yes.
In the long term, you're looking, even in the medium term, you're looking at all those things. Those are indices you look at to say, does it make sense for me to go public now? Because it affects your valuation, especially when investors, are coming in, right? If you're in naira, and obviously you're a Nigerian business, your income and everything is in naira, and you want to go public at a certain figure, then the naira tanks, the economy tanks, your valuation drops by half, so all those kind of things are factors and are important. So commercial papers have then therefore become a lot more attractive, because people don't want to take those risks going public. If they don't hit their numbers, also because of the economy and recession, it also affects the share price, because they need to report on a quarterly basis. So commercial papers and bonds, for those reasons, have become a lot more attractive for firms to get the funding they need, and not just for people who are going public, because there are a number of established firms as well. I don't want to reel out the names, who have gone, the route of, commercial papers to raise the capital that they need, for onward expansion and growth. So,
Thank you
the
so
interesting
much
thing
for
is the
that.
companies get the money they need, but obviously the NSC is, and stockbrokers are all complaining about how do they get more, there needs to be balance, how do we get more back into equities, because to be honest, stock market is a lot more available to everyone. You understand? It's like retail investing. It's easier for a retail investor to get things than perhaps maybe a commercial paper. You're not, you on the streets are not going to hear about it. So.
Because I was just going to add that for you to play in that sector and invest heavily, get commercial paper in the first place in this kind of climb, you would need to have a huge appetite for risk.
It's also indicative of where we are. If you put out an IPO, do people have that free money to do that? Do you get it? It's indicative of our economic state, and that's why companies would rather do that,
And I was also going to ask, and this is on a side note, but still relevant to this conversation. For instance, if a company does an initial offering internally, and you have
placement.
Yes, placement. They have shareholders, right, and they now release an IPO and all that, and they're going to go public. First of all, they give first right of refusal to those who already own their shares. In exchanging those, the margin of the ratio of exchange, the size of that, is it affected by the economy or the state of the economy? In a sense, based on your explanation in terms of the economic situation of the country, for instance.
So you mean subscription,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you own 30,000 shares in an X company, and then they now release an IPO, and you're going to buy shares because you already have 30,000, and you're going to trade it. Sometimes you're meant to exchange, by a certain ratio. Is that affected by the trade?
Well, yeah, directly in a sense and indirect. So if the reason why you would, buy into something before it's public, private placement essentially is that you're buying it as a discount, right? And then when it goes public, it's supposed to go higher. So if you bought something as private placement, you're expecting and you're hoping that it does go public. Now, of course, the way the general economy and everything affects that is at what rate does it go, public, right? The better the value, when they go public for you, obviously the better. But if factors like the economy affect the valuation and the share price, which would then obviously affect the share price, it would impact your margins.
And even the buying by the general public, do you get? Because what you're asking is people to come in to buy.
Yeah.
So if it's undersubscribed, it's a deficit.
It's an issue, and that's something you have to deal with as an entity.
Yeah,
Thank you so
and
much.
it's a risk.
Now, court restraints Akeredolu from sacking Ondo CJ, that's Chief Justice. Chief Justice of the state has been a squabble regarding constitutional powers and whatnot. But what are your thoughts on this story?
Well, I'm rolling my eyes.
Yeah.
I'm rolling my eyes
Why?
because the person who is in question is a former president of the Nigerian Bar Association. That's the governor in question, who is seeking to remove a judge without going through the valid process.
So it's not as if he doesn't
So
understand the
yeah,
legal
so for me,
implications.
I'm rolling my eyes because that is the biggest disrespect that you can do. You want if someone hasn't been aware, or the person is, there's something they say about the power and hubris of the position of in government, and governors, anyone in position has to be. We need more responsible public leaders, right? Who are able to restrain their emotions, restrain their whatever is underplaying, and at least do the needful. If you can't contain yourself, do the needful. It's very embarrassing that you are seeking, because the procedure is laid out there, and I don't even think we should spend too long on it.
Yes.
You should go to the National Judicial Council before you. It's on the recommendation of that any judge would be removed. So why are you seeking the breach process, knowing all that you should know?
Yeah, knowing that all that you know.
Yes.
Even
No less assume.
that he doesn't know,
Right.
or he probably forgot because he doesn't know. Today, let's get to this next story, please. Bringing workers get 2 work-free days for farming, boost productivity, yes or no?
It's a good initiative, as long as they actually do spend it farming.
Why?
Yeah, that's true. So
Just reminded me of sanitation days.
exactly, and people are laying on the backs instead. So it's good, and it's see, if you look at what insecurity and communal clashes has done to food production in this country, and it's not in recent years. It's 10 years, going, to be honest. So any sort of initiative, sort of remind people, in past time. So it's more. I don't think. Perhaps it's more symbolic in a sense, but it's useful again if they spend it farming. It's that thing. Maybe it's an opportunity instead of encouraging everyone to leave the rural areas to urban centers, that that they can farm. It's a sad thing that we're still doing it as a subsistence farming, as a subsistence level.
Yep, the mechanization is really the way to scale that. So we have that, do we have enough capacity for that? No. Well, I said your analyst submission on commercial papers is spot on. Albert says, good morning, Smooth FM, freshly pressed crew. I'm enjoying your show. Many thanks to the guests in the studio for the analysis. Inka Blues said, but please, who are the folks that sit down and make these policies and levies? Like, who goes through their brain? Do they know the telcos will push these costs on us? Already, data charges are pure horror. Inka, I think the necessary questions you really should have is, do they recharge their phones? I mean,
They don't pay for it. They don't pay to
We
recharge
pay
their
for
phone.
it.
They don't pay.
Ahmed Ogudilege was talking about separation of emotions. Anyway, he says the federal government is being advised to generate revenue through all means by people who do not consider the impact on the common Nigerians. Federal government is finding ways to generate revenue from the poorest Nigerians that use airtime. Abayami says, hey, Bob, I'd like to meet with the lawyer in the city. Is there any lawyer here? No. Just to be sure. Of course you are.
Oh, you're right.
I was going to answer for you, but just say it with your chest. Thank you so much. I feel good Friday indeed. Tunde Kofi, thank you for being here. As always, at Big Post is his handle on socials. If you check out the one that is that, you're your own. And Amy Manuel, thank you so much for being here as always. We'll continue the conversation on socials with the hashtag freshly pressed 981. Watch out for the headlines because we'll talk about it prior. And then 9 o'clock will be time for us to segue into the Feel Good Friday conversation for Lagos Talks 981. But next is the Locker Room 981 on Smooth. Thank you so much.
So Lagos